How would you describe his relationship with the media? Because he didn't start off as terribly comfortable giving interviews or televised appearances.
It's very funny. He was. People talk about the mystery of Chirac, le mystère Chirac, and the reason is because for all of his sort of, garrulous, socialite, outgoing persona, there was a lot of mystery about him. There was a lot of reserve to Jacques Chirac. He was, we tend to talk about Mitterrand as being a very complex character, right? He had early ties to sort of the Vichy occupier regime, and then but he also later was part of the resistance. And so Mitterrand has always been seen as this sort of enigma and a very complex man. And yet, if you actually look at it, Jacques Chirac, because he's so popular with the people, there's been this perhaps tendency in the popular imagination to oversimplify him. And yet, I think he's an extremely complex person. I think that, his positions evolved a lot over time. I think that, even on a certain level with, yes, he was a man of the people, and as we were just talking about the agricultural fair, patting the cows and holding the lambs and basking in all of that with the farmers. At the same time, he was also a man who liked to sort of see himself as a cultural man. He was a man who could, talk for hours about Japanese and Chinese culture, which might strike you as a little bizarre because he wasn't, this big reader, self-professed. He probably preferred watching television to sitting down and reading. He didn't have this very cerebral reputation. And with the media, I think his image tended to become the narrative around Jacques Chirac, at least among the French media, tended to become very sort of structured. He was a man who was beloved by the French, who had a common touch, who was what you might call, in French, they would say, un type sympa, literally just a cool guy, and that became the narrative, and that endearing, affable type of guy, alongside then the contradictions later on where a lot of the French media, all, when the sleazy days in City Hall all came to light, then all of a sudden it became Jacques Chirac, the first head of state to be convicted of a crime. So Jacques Chirac, the embezzler of public funds, diverting public funds from City Hall. So it's a paradoxical image in the media, but I think that the French media overall, the word often used is hagiography, you're turning someone sort of into a saint. And it's not that the coverage of him today in the French media on the day of the announcement that he's died is all of a saint. It does portray a complex picture of the man, but depending on where that media stands, it's also one that at times underscores the fact that he had a darker chapter in his legacy, and he had a darker side. And the words that you keep seeing in a lot of the coverage here is that he was merciless. He was a bulldozer. George Pompidou calling him my bulldozer when he was a minister. So a complex man, I would say. And I think the French media has done more or less a pretty good job, although probably has erred sometimes on the side of turning him into perhaps more of a saint than he actually was.
Indeed, you mentioned